You can't possibly solve this equation. No one has for 15 years. The teacher's mocking voice echoed through the classroom as she excluded the farmer's son from the special mathematics presentation. But what happened the very next day left an entire auditorium of world-renowned mathematicians speechless. When Marcus Johnson stood at that podium, pain still lingering in his back from his teacher's cruel punishment, did anyone expect this humble farmer's son to revolutionize mathematics with a solution inspired by irrigation systems? I'm still a farmer's son. That hasn't changed. What changed is that someone finally looked past that to see what else I could be. This story will move you to tears and remind you that brilliance can be found in the most unexpected places. Dear viewer, if you are watching my story for the first time, I humbly request you write the location from where you are watching right now, subscribe this channel and press the bell icon now not to miss the notifications of my daily published new stories. Thank you, and let's dive into the full story. Marcus Johnson clutched his worn backpack tightly as he gazed up at the imposing brick facade of Westridge Academy. The prestigious high school stood in stark contrast to the modest rural school he'd attended until winning a scholarship here. The early morning sun glinted off polished windows that seemed to scrutinize him, much like the students who brushed past in their designer clothes. "You got this," he whispered to himself, repeating his father's words from earlier that morning. Samuel Johnson had risen before dawn to complete extra farm chores so he could drive his son to school in their ancient pickup truck. Marcus straightened his second-hand blazer, the best they could afford, and walked through the grand entrance. The hallways gleamed with trophies and framed photographs of successful alumni. He followed the printed schedule in his hand, navigating toward his first class, Advanced Mathematics with Ms. Victoria Winters. He paused at the doorway, taking a deep breath before entering. 20 pairs of eyes swiveled toward him as conversations hushed. "You must be the scholarship student," Ms. Winters said without looking up from her desk. Her voice carried a hint of disdain that made Marcus's stomach tighten. She was a tall woman with perfectly styled blonde hair and cold blue eyes that finally lifted to assess him. "Mr. Johnson, is it?" "Yes, ma'am." "Marcus Johnson," he replied politely. Ms. Winters gestured vaguely toward the back of the room. "Find a seat. We've already started the semester, so you'll need to catch up on your own time." Marcus nodded and moved toward an empty desk in the back row. As he passed, he heard whispers. "Is that what farmers wear to school?" a boy in an expensive watch snickered. A girl with carefully straightened hair leaned over to her friend. "My dad says they're letting just anyone in these days." One student, however, offered a small smile as he passed. The Asian American girl with kind eyes mouthed, "Hi," as he took his seat behind her. "I'm Emily," she whispered over her shoulder as Ms. Winters turned to write on the whiteboard. "Marcus," he replied with the first genuine smile since arriving. "Mr. Johnson, if you're finished making friends, perhaps you'd like to tell us the derivative of f(x) equals 3x superscript 2, 2x plus 5. Ms. Winters called out, making several students snicker. Without hesitation, Marcus answered, "f(x) equals 6x, 2. Ms. Winters raised an eyebrow, clearly expecting him to falter. "Correct," she said tersely before turning back to the board. For the remainder of the class, Marcus felt Ms. Winters' eyes repeatedly returning to him with a mixture of suspicion and annoyance. He kept his focus on his notebook, filling it with careful notes and occasionally solving problems before she'd finished explaining them. As the bell rang, Ms. Winters called out, "Mr. Johnson, a word." Marcus approached her desk as other students filed out. "Where did you study mathematics before this?" she asked, lips pressed into a thin line. "At Riverdale High, ma'am. But mostly on my own. My dad gets me books from the library." Ms. Winters gave a disbelieving laugh. "A farmer's son teaching himself calculus? Well, Mr. Johnson, Westridge Academy has certain standards. I hope you can keep up without disrupting my classroom." Marcus swallowed his hurt. "Yes, ma'am. I'll do my best." As he left, he heard her mutter, "We'll see how long that lasts." Outside, Emily waited for him. "Don't mind Ms. Winters," she said. "She's like that with everyone she thinks doesn't belong here." Thanks, Marcus said, fighting to maintain his confidence as they walked to their next class. The next day, Marcus arrived early to mathematics class, deliberately choosing to stand at the back of the room. His back throbbed painfully, a reminder of his first week at Westridge when Ms. Winters had struck him with a ruler after he politely pointed out an error in her solution. The bruising had been severe, and though 2 weeks had passed, sitting for long periods remained unbearable. Ms. Winters entered the classroom with her characteristic sharp clicks of heels against tile. Her gaze immediately landed on Marcus. "Mr. Johnson, take your seat immediately," she commanded, her voice cutting through the pre-class chatter. "I'm sorry, Ms. Winters," Marcus replied respectfully, "but I have a back injury. Standing is more comfortable for me right now." The classroom fell silent. Ms. Winters' eyes narrowed dangerously as she approached him. "This is a classroom, not a bus station," she said coldly. "Everyone sits. That's the rule." Marcus hesitated. "Ma'am, I really can't." "You can't?" she interrupted, her voice rising. "Or you won't. Is this how they behave on farms? Standing around when instructed to sit?" Snickers erupted from several students, including Tyler Brooks, the wealthy boy who had mocked Marcus's clothes the day before. "It's not that," Marcus said quietly. "I have an injury from." "An injury?" Ms. Winters laughed incredulously. "Did you fall off a tractor, Mr. Johnson?" More laughter followed, and Marcus felt heat rising to his cheeks. He wanted to explain that she had caused his injury, but challenging her publicly would only make things worse. "I'll try to sit, ma'am," he conceded, moving painfully toward an empty desk. As he lowered himself, he couldn't suppress a wince. Emily, sitting nearby, watched with concern. "Now," Ms. Winters continued with a satisfied smile, "today we'll be discussing partial derivatives. Though I suppose some of you might find more practical applications, like calculating how many chickens you can fit in a coop." She looked directly at Marcus, inspiring another round of laughter. Tyler Brooks leaned back in his chair, clearly enjoying the spectacle. Throughout the class, Marcus shifted uncomfortably, occasionally standing briefly when the pain became too intense. Each time, Ms. Winters would pause her lecture to stare pointedly until he sat again. When she distributed worksheets, Marcus completed his in minutes despite the discomfort. He sat quietly, reviewing his answers while other students continued working. Ms. Winters noticed his idle pencil. "Finished already, Mr. Johnson? Or simply giving up?" "Finished, ma'am," he replied quietly. She strode over and snatched his paper, scanning it with obvious intent to find errors. Her expression tightened as she reviewed his flawless solutions. She said, dropping the paper back on his desk. "Lucky guesses, perhaps." As class ended, Marcus rose carefully, relief washing over him as he could finally stand properly again. "Mr. Johnson," Ms. Winters called, "since you believe you're above sitting like everyone else, perhaps you should explain to the class tomorrow why farmers deserve special treatment in academia." "That's not fair," Emily interjected unexpectedly. "He's injured." Ms. Winters turned her cold gaze to Emily. "Did I ask for your input, Ms. Chen? Or are you volunteering to join him?" Emily fell silent, but gave Marcus a sympathetic look as they left the classroom. In the hallway, Marcus leaned against the wall, breathing deeply through the pain. "You should report her," Emily suggested quietly. Marcus shook his head. "I can't risk my scholarship. My dad sacrificed everything for me to be here." "Why is your back hurt, anyway?" she asked. Marcus looked away. "It's nothing. I'll be fine." But they both knew it wasn't nothing, and they both knew who was responsible. The ancient pickup truck rumbled down the dirt road leading to the Johnson family farm as the setting sun painted the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. Marcus sat beside his father, Samuel, staring out the window at the familiar fields they'd tended together since he was old enough to hold a trowel. "How was school today?" Samuel asked, his deep voice gentle but concerned. He'd noticed his son's winces and careful movements. "It was okay," Marcus replied automatically. Samuel glanced sideways at his son. At 45, years of physical labor had etched lines into his face, but his eyes remained sharp and knowing. Your back still bothering you? Marcus nodded reluctantly. It's getting better. You need to tell me what really happened, son, Samuel said as they pulled up to their modest two-bedroom farmhouse. 2 weeks ago, you came home barely able to stand. Now you're still in pain. That's not from falling in PE like you claimed. The truck stopped, but neither moved to get out. In the quiet cab, Marcus finally let the truth spill out. It was Ms. Winters, my math teacher, he admitted, voice barely above a whisper. First day of class, she made a mistake on a complex integration problem. I raised my hand and politely pointed it out. Marcus paused, remembering. After class, she called me to stay behind. Said a boy like me had no right to question her expertise. Samuel's hands tightened on the steering wheel. What did she do, Marcus? She had this wooden ruler. Said she needed to teach me my place. Made me bend over her desk and... Marcus's voice faltered. She struck you. Samuel's voice was deadly quiet. Marcus nodded. 6 times. Hard enough that He couldn't finish. Samuel closed his eyes briefly, controlling his anger. Why didn't you tell me? Or the principal? She said if I reported her, she'd make sure my scholarship was revoked. Said no one would believe a farmer's kid over her anyway. Marcus looked at his calloused hands. Dad, we need this scholarship. After Mom died and the medical bills. I know how much you've sacrificed. They sat in silence for a moment before Samuel spoke. You know what your mother would say right now? She'd say knowledge isn't just for people in fancy schools. She'd remind you that your great-grandfather was a slave who taught himself to read by candlelight, and your grandmother put herself through college cleaning houses. Marcus nodded, a lump forming in his throat at the mention of his mother, gone 3 years now to cancer. Come on, Samuel said, opening his door. Let's get some dinner, and I want to check those bruises again. Inside their humble home, photographs of generations of Johnsons lined the walls, farmers, teachers, and dreamers who had overcome impossible odds. After a simple but hearty dinner of vegetables from their own garden, Samuel carefully applied a homemade salve to the still visible bruises across his son's lower back. These should have healed more by now, he murmured worriedly. Later, as Marcus worked through advanced mathematics problems at the kitchen table, Samuel watched his son with quiet pride. From an early age, Marcus had shown an extraordinary gift for numbers, solving complex equations before he'd even learned to ride a bicycle. Samuel had nurtured this talent, driving miles to borrow books from the county library, taking on extra jobs to buy a computer, staying up late to learn alongside his son when the material surpassed his own education. Dad, Marcus said suddenly, looking up from his work, sometimes I wonder if I really belong at Westridge. Maybe I should just... Stop right there, Samuel interrupted firmly. You earned that scholarship fair and square. Your mind is a gift, son. Don't let anyone convince you it's worth less because of where we live or what we do. He tapped the table for emphasis. Farming taught me that growth happens in darkness, under pressure. This is just your season of pressure. Marcus smiled slightly. You always have a farming metaphor. Because they're always true, Samuel replied with a wink. Now, tell me about this equation you're working on. Pretend I understand what all those symbols mean. Marcus laughed and began explaining, his eyes lighting up as they always did when discussing mathematics. For a few hours, the pain in his back and the humiliation at school faded away as father and son lost themselves in a world of numbers and theories. As they prepared for bed, Samuel placed a hand on his son's shoulder. Tomorrow's a new day, Marcus. Remember what I always tell you, our worth isn't determined by others' perception of us, Marcus finished with a small smile. That's right. Now get some rest. Those equations aren't going to solve themselves. Neither knew that the next day would bring a challenge that would change everything, a mathematical problem that had stumped experts for years, and an opportunity for a farmer's son to prove his extraordinary gift to the world. The following morning, an unusual buzz of excitement filled Westridge Academy's hallways. Students gathered in clusters, whispering animatedly as Marcus navigated through them, catching fragments of conversation. Famous mathematician. Impossible equation. No one's been able to solve it. Emily appeared beside him, eyes bright with excitement. Did you hear? Dr. James Carter is visiting today. Marcus's eyes widened. The Dr. Carter? The Fields Medal winner? Yes. He's giving a special presentation during third period. The whole school's talking about it. Before Marcus could respond, the bell rang, signaling first period. As they hurried to Ms. Winter's class, Emily continued, apparently he's bringing some famous unsolved equation to challenge the students. When they entered the classroom, Ms. Winters was writing furiously on the whiteboard, her usual composure noticeably strained. Marcus carefully took his position standing at the back of the room, bracing for another confrontation. To his surprise, Ms. Winters barely acknowledged him, instead addressing the class with forced brightness. As you've all heard, we have the privilege of hosting Dr. James Carter today. He'll be presenting a special mathematical challenge in the auditorium during third period. Her eyes scanned the classroom, deliberately skipping over Marcus. Only our most promising students will attend. This is an opportunity to showcase Westridge's academic excellence. Tyler Brooks raised his hand with a smirk. Will we get extra credit if we solve his equation? Ms. Winters laughed. Tyler, even professional mathematicians haven't solved this problem. But yes, anyone making significant progress would certainly receive recognition. Marcus felt a familiar stirring of interest. Mathematical challenges had always ignited something in him, a kind of clarity and focus that transcended his everyday life. As class ended, Ms. Winters called out, "I'll be distributing passes for the presentation. Please remain seated." She walked methodically through the rows, handing a blue slip to each student. When she reached Marcus's row, she skipped him entirely and continued to the next desk. Marcus raised his hand. "Excuse me, Ms. Winters. I didn't receive a pass." She turned with a cold smile. "Mr. Johnson, given your standing issues, I thought it best you remain here. We wouldn't want you disrespecting Dr. Carter as you've disrespected me. But furthermore," she continued as if he hadn't spoken, "this presentation is for students who might genuinely benefit from advanced mathematical concepts. Your time would be better spent reviewing basics." Emily frowned. "But Marcus is one of the best math students in class." "Ms. Chen, your continued interruptions are becoming tiresome," Ms. Winters snapped. "Mr. Johnson will remain behind. That's final." The hurt must have shown on Marcus's face because Tyler Brooks snickered, "Guess farmers don't get invited to the fancy math parties." When the bell rang, Ms. Winters addressed Marcus again. "You will report to the library during third period. I've informed the librarian you'll be shelving books, a task more suited to your background." Marcus clutched his backpack strap tightly, fighting to maintain his composure. As students filed out, Emily lingered. "This isn't right," she whispered. "Dr. Carter should meet you. You're exactly the kind of student he'd want to challenge." Marcus shook his head. "It's okay. Really." But they both knew it wasn't. During second period, news spread about Dr. Carter's arrival. Students glimpsed him walking with Principal Edwards, a distinguished black man in his 60s with salt and pepper hair and an air of quiet authority that made even the most privileged students at Westridge straighten in his presence. By third period, Marcus reluctantly reported to the library while the rest of his class headed to the auditorium. The elderly librarian directed him to a cart of books needing shelving, her kindly face suggesting she found the punishment as unreasonable as he did. As Marcus methodically placed books on shelves, his mind wandered to what might be happening in the auditorium. What was this famous unsolved equation? What approach would Dr. Carter suggest? The questions burned in him, his fingers itching for chalk or pencil rather than book spines. He never imagined that by the next morning, that very equation would change the course of his life forever. Psst. Marcus. Emily's urgent whisper caught Marcus's attention as he stood in the cafeteria line. She rushed toward him, phone in hand, eyes bright with excitement. I took a picture of Dr. Carter's equation, she said breathlessly, glancing around to ensure no teachers were watching. The one no one could solve. I thought you might want to see it. Marcus's heart raced as Emily showed him her phone. On the screen was a complex mathematical equation sprawling across Westridge Academy's auditorium whiteboard. Dr. Carter, a distinguished black man with intelligent eyes and a commanding presence, stood beside it, captured mid-gesture. What did he say about it? Marcus asked, eyes already tracing the variables and functions. He called it the harmonic convergence problem. Said mathematicians have been trying to solve it for 15 years, Emily explained as they found a quiet corner table. No one's found a complete solution, just partial approaches. He challenged anyone to make progress on it. Marcus stared at the equation, something clicking in his mind. This relates to wave patterns, but with an unusual constraint. Dr. Carter mentioned that. He said traditional approaches keep failing because of some boundary condition, Emily said, impressed. Anyway, I thought it was unfair you couldn't see it. Thank you, Marcus said sincerely, quickly snapping a picture with his own phone before Emily left to join other friends. Throughout the afternoon, the equation simmered in Marcus's mind. During English, while discussing Shakespeare, he found himself mentally manipulating variables. During chemistry, as other students measured solutions, he calculated potential approaches. By the time his father picked him up, Marcus was bursting with mathematical energy. "You're looking better today," Samuel observed as they drove home. "Back feeling better?" "A little," Marcus admitted. "Dad, something amazing happened." He explained about Dr. Carter's visit and the equation, showing his father the picture. Samuel smiled at his son's enthusiasm. "I don't understand any of that, but I know that look. That's your mother's look when she found a problem worth solving." That evening, after completing farm chores, Marcus spread his notebooks across the kitchen table. Samuel brought him a mug of hot chocolate and quietly left him to his work, understanding that his son had entered a mental space where interruptions would only frustrate. Hours passed. The farmhouse grew quiet except for the scratch of Marcus's pencil and occasional frustrated grunts when an approach failed. Around midnight, Samuel peeked in to find his son still working, surrounded by crumpled paper. "Marcus," he said gently, "it's late. This will still be here tomorrow." "Just a little longer," Marcus pleaded. "I think I'm onto something." Samuel nodded, knowing better than to argue when that particular gleam appeared in his son's eyes. Near dawn, as first light crept through the kitchen window, Marcus shot upright in his chair. "That's it," he exclaimed to the empty room. The solution had come to him through an unexpected connection, something his father had taught him about irrigation systems. The way water finds equilibrium through varying pressure gradients suddenly illuminated the mathematical problem. Conventional approaches treated the equation as purely theoretical, but Marcus saw a practical application that revealed an elegant solution. With trembling hands, he transferred his work to a clean sheet, checking each step meticulously. By the time Samuel entered the kitchen to start breakfast, Marcus had completed his solution. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Samuel commented, noting his son's exhausted but exhilarated expression. "Better," Marcus replied with a tired smile. "I've seen the answer." The morning air carried a crisp chill as Marcus arrived at Westridge Academy an hour before classes began. Clutching his carefully prepared solution, he navigated the empty hallways, heart pounding with each step. His back still ached, but the excitement of his mathematical breakthrough overshadowed the pain. According to the schedule Emily had shared, Dr. Carter would be using the mathematics department office during his visit. Marcus found the door, a polished mahogany slab with a gleaming brass nameplate, and hesitated, suddenly doubting himself. What if his solution was wrong? What if Dr. Carter laughed at the farmer's son who presumed to solve what professionals couldn't? Taking a deep breath, Marcus knelt and slipped his neatly written solution under the door, signed simply M. Johnson. He had included his email address but nothing else, no mention of his grade level or background. He wanted the work to speak for itself. As he stood, a janitor rounded the corner, eyeing him suspiciously. "You're here early," the older man commented. "Just dropping something off," Marcus replied, quickly walking away, anticipation and anxiety swirling in his stomach. Throughout morning classes, Marcus found it nearly impossible to concentrate. Ms. Winters seemed particularly venomous in mathematics class, perhaps still smarting from her decision to exclude him from Dr. Carter's presentation. "Mr. Johnson, since you chose not to participate in yesterday's special lecture, perhaps you'd like to demonstrate your understanding of convergent series," she called out, clearly hoping to embarrass him. Marcus answered flawlessly, earning a frustrated scowl from Ms. Winters and a subtle thumbs up from Emily. When lunchtime arrived, Marcus sat alone, picking at his food and checking his email compulsively. Had Dr. Carter even found his solution? Would he take it seriously? Emily joined him, sliding onto the bench across from him. "You look nervous. Everything okay?" Before Marcus could respond, Tyler Brooks approached their table, his usual smirk in place. "Hey, farm boy, heard you missed the big math show yesterday. Too busy milking cows?" "Leave him alone, Tyler," Emily snapped. Tyler raised his hands in mock surrender. "Just making conversation. Dr. Carter's equation was insane anyway. He said no student would solve it, probably not even the teachers could." Marcus remained silent, which Tyler interpreted as defeat. With a satisfied laugh, he sauntered away to rejoin his wealthy friends. "Ignore him," Emily advised, but Marcus was barely listening, his mind still on his solution. The afternoon dragged until finally, it was time for Ms. Winters' advanced mathematics class. Marcus took his usual standing position at the back of the room, mentally preparing for another uncomfortable hour. Ms. Winters began her lecture on differential equations, writing on the whiteboard with sharp, angry strokes. 10 minutes in, a knock interrupted her. The classroom door opened to reveal Dr. James Carter, holding a familiar sheet of paper in his hand. His presence commanded immediate attention, tall and distinguished in a tailored suit, with intelligent eyes that scanned the room as if searching for someone. "Ms. Winters, I apologize for the interruption," he said in a deep, resonant voice that carried authority without arrogance. Ms. Winters' demeanor instantly transformed from stern to fawning. "Dr. Carter. What an unexpected pleasure. How may I assist you?" Dr. Carter held up the paper. "I'm looking for one of your students. Someone slipped this under my door this morning, a solution to the harmonic convergence problem I presented yesterday." A murmur rippled through the classroom. Ms. Winters looked stunned. "That's impossible," she said with a dismissive laugh. "That equation has stumped professional mathematicians." "And yet," Dr. Carter replied, his eyes continuing to scan the students, "this solution is elegant, innovative, and as far as I can determine, correct. It approaches the problem from an angle I've never seen, applying principles of fluid dynamics to a purely mathematical construct." He looked at the signature. "I'm looking for M. Johnson." The classroom fell silent. Ms. Winters' smile froze on her face. "Johnson?" she repeated, disbelief evident in her voice. "There must be some mistake." "No mistake," Dr. Carter affirmed. "The work is original and brilliant. Is M. Johnson in this class?" All eyes turned to the back of the room where Marcus stood, his heart hammering in his chest. Slowly, he raised his hand. That's me, sir," he said, his voice stronger than he expected. "Marcus Johnson." Ms. Winters' face drained of color as Dr. Carter's eyes lit up with interest. "You solved this equation? Alone?" "Yes, sir," Marcus confirmed. Ms. Winters recovered quickly, her expression hardening. "Dr. Carter, there's been some misunderstanding. Marcus is our scholarship student. He couldn't possibly." "I'd like to hear from Mr. Johnson himself," Dr. Carter interrupted firmly, turning back to Marcus. "Would you mind explaining your approach?" As all eyes in the classroom fixed on him, Marcus took a deep breath, acutely aware that this moment would change everything. The classroom remained deathly silent as Marcus made his way to the front, each step measured to manage his back pain. Dr. Carter watched him with intense interest, while Ms. Winter's face contorted in a barely concealed mixture of disbelief and contempt. "Mr. Johnson," Dr. Carter said, handing him the solution paper, "would you walk us through your thinking?" Marcus took a piece of chalk, briefly meeting Emily's encouraging smile before turning to the board. His hand was remarkably steady as he began writing. "The harmonic convergence problem has been approached primarily through abstract algebra," he explained, his voice growing stronger with each word. "But I noticed something while looking at the boundary conditions." He drew a series of curves, explaining how he had connected the mathematical problem to physical systems his father had taught him about on the farm. "Water finding equilibrium in uneven irrigation channels follows similar patterns," Marcus continued. "When I applied fluid dynamics principles to the mathematical constraints, these terms simplified dramatically." Dr. Carter's eyebrows raised in surprise, then appreciation. "You're using practical physics to solve a theoretical mathematical problem. Fascinating." Ms. Winters cleared her throat sharply. "Dr. Carter, while this is all very entertaining, I find it hard to believe that a student with Mr. Johnson's background could produce this level of work independently." The implied accusation hung in the air. Marcus felt heat rising to his face but continued his explanation, detailing the final steps of his solution with precise clarity. When he finished, Dr. Carter was nodding with growing excitement. "This is remarkable work. You've created a bridge between theoretical mathematics and applied physics that none of us considered." He turned to Ms. Winters. "You must be exceptionally proud to have such a brilliant student in your class." Before Ms. Winters could respond, Tyler Brooks raised his hand. "Dr. Carter, isn't it possible he copied this from somewhere? Or got help?" Dr. Carter considered the question. "An insightful concern, young man, but this solution is entirely novel. It hasn't been published anywhere because no one has solved it this way." He turned back to Marcus. "Mr. Johnson, what inspired this particular approach?" Marcus hesitated, aware of how his answer might sound. "My father's a farmer, sir. He taught me about irrigation systems, how water behaves when flowing through channels of different shapes and sizes. The equation reminded me of those principles." A few students snickered, but Dr. Carter's face lit up. "That's precisely what makes this so brilliant. Great mathematics often emerges from unexpected connections." He addressed the class. "This is what true innovation looks like, bringing knowledge from one domain to illuminate another." Ms. Winters' smile had become a brittle mask. "While this is certainly interesting, we must return to our lesson plan." "Actually," Dr. Carter said, checking his watch, "I'd like to continue this discussion with Mr. Johnson. Principal Edwards has granted me use of the conference room for the remainder of my visit." He turned to Marcus. "Would you be willing to discuss your work further?" Before Marcus could answer, Ms. Winters interjected, "Mr. Johnson has already missed yesterday's presentation. He can't afford to fall further behind in his studies." Dr. Carter's expression cooled slightly. "Ms. Winters, this young man has just solved a problem that has stumped the mathematical community for 15 years. I believe that constitutes an educational experience worth a missed class period." The classroom remained silent as Ms. Winters struggled to maintain her composure. Finally, she nodded stiffly. "Very well. Mr. Johnson, you're excused." As Marcus gathered his belongings, Dr. Carter turned to leave, then paused. "By the way, Ms. Winters, why wasn't Mr. Johnson at yesterday's presentation? I would have thought you'd want your strongest mathematics student there." Ms. Winters' face paled. "There was a misunderstanding about available seating." Dr. Carter's eyes narrowed slightly, but he simply nodded and gestured for Marcus to follow him. As they left the classroom, Marcus caught Emily's proud smile and Tyler's stunned expression. For the first time since arriving at Westridge Academy, he walked the hallways with his head held high, his extraordinary mind finally recognized for what it truly was. The conference room door had barely closed behind them when Ms. Winters burst in, her face flushed with barely contained anger. "Dr. Carter, I must speak with you immediately," she demanded, casting a venomous glance at Marcus. Dr. Carter raised an eyebrow. "Ms. Winters, Mr. Johnson and I were about to discuss his solution." "That's precisely what concerns me," she replied, straightening her blazer. "I have reason to believe this work is not his own." Marcus felt as if he'd been struck. "That's not true. I solved it myself." "Serious accusations require serious evidence," Dr. Carter said calmly. "What leads you to this conclusion, Ms. Winters?" She produced a folder from under her arm. "Mr. Johnson has been at Westridge Academy for only 3 weeks. In that time, he has shown a consistent disregard for rules and authority." She opened the folder. "He refuses to sit in class, disrupts lectures, and now mysteriously produces a solution to an equation that professional mathematicians haven't solved." "I stand because," Marcus began, but Ms. Winters cut him off. "Furthermore," she continued, "his work contains notation and approaches typically taught at university level. How would a student from a rural school with limited resources access such advanced material?" Dr. Carter studied Ms. Winters thoughtfully. "Ms. Winters, exceptional minds often educate themselves. The history of mathematics is filled with autodidacts who transcended their circumstances." At that moment, Principal Edwards entered, his normally composed face showing concern. "I was told there's a situation requiring my attention." "Indeed," Ms. Winters said quickly. "Dr. Carter believes a student has solved his equation, but I have serious concerns about academic dishonesty." Principal Edwards looked at Marcus with surprise. "Mr. Johnson, you solved Dr. Carter's equation?" Before Marcus could respond, the door opened again, and Emily entered with Tyler Brooks close behind. "I'm sorry to interrupt," Emily said breathlessly, "but I heard what Ms. Winters is saying, and it's not fair." "Ms. Chen, this is a private matter," Principal Edwards began. "But it's not right," Emily insisted. "Marcus is brilliant. I've seen him solve problems instantly that take the rest of us 10 minutes. Surprisingly, Tyler stepped forward. "It's true, sir. Johnson finished yesterday's test in, 5 minutes. And got everything right." Ms. Winters' eyes narrowed dangerously. "This doesn't explain how he obtained university-level knowledge or why he consistently refuses to follow basic classroom rules like sitting down during lessons." "I can explain that," Emily said quietly. All eyes turned to her as she took a deep breath. "Marcus stands because he's injured. His back was hurt when—" She faltered, looking at Marcus. "When what?" Principal Edwards prompted. Marcus closed his eyes briefly, then spoke. "When Ms. Winters struck me with a ruler during my first week here." The room fell silent as he continued, "I had corrected a mistake in her solution to a partial differential equation. After class, she said I needed to learn my place and hit me repeatedly across my lower back." Ms. Winters gasped in outrage. "This is absurd. A desperate lie to distract from his cheating." "Is it?" Emily challenged. "I saw the bruises in PE when his shirt lifted. Other students did too." Tyler nodded uncomfortably. "Yeah, they were pretty bad. Black and purple all across his back." Dr. Carter's face had grown grave. "These are serious allegations on both sides. I suggest we verify Mr. Johnson's mathematical abilities directly." He turned to Marcus. "Would you be willing to solve another equation? One you haven't seen before?" "Yes, sir," Marcus said firmly. Dr. Carter wrote a complex equation on the conference room whiteboard, different from the harmonic convergence problem but equally challenging. "Take your time," he said. Marcus studied the equation, his mind quickly identifying patterns and possibilities. The room watched in tense silence as he worked, chalk moving confidently across the board. After just 7 minutes, he stepped back. "I believe this is the solution, sir." Dr. Carter examined Marcus's work, checking each step carefully. His face broke into a wide smile. Correct. And using an elegant approach I wouldn't have considered. He turned to the others. There's no doubt in my mind. Mr. Johnson is a mathematical prodigy. Ms. Winters sputtered, this doesn't address the issue of his behavior or his accusations against me. Principal Edwards' expression had hardened. Actually, Ms. Winters, that's precisely what we need to address now. He turned to Marcus. Mr. Johnson, would you be willing to show us these alleged injuries? Marcus hesitated, then nodded. He partially lifted his shirt in the back, revealing yellowish-purple bruises still visible across his lower back. Dr. Carter inhaled sharply. Principal Edwards' face darkened with anger. Ms. Winters, my office. Now, he said in a tone that brooked no argument. Dr. Carter, would you mind staying with Mr. Johnson? I'll need to speak with all parties involved, but first, I need a word with Ms. Winters alone. As they left, the room fell silent. Emily moved to Marcus's side, placing a supportive hand on his shoulder. Even Tyler looked uncomfortable, avoiding Marcus's eyes. Dr. Carter regarded Marcus with newfound respect and concern. Mr. Johnson, I am deeply sorry for what you've endured. But I want you to know that your mathematical gift is extraordinary. What you've accomplished today will not be forgotten. For Marcus, those words meant everything. Principal Edwards' office had become the epicenter of a storm. Marcus sat straight back despite his pain, flanked by his father Samuel, who had been called in immediately. Across from them, Ms. Winters perched on the edge of her chair, her usual confidence noticeably diminished. Mr. Johnson, Principal Edwards addressed Samuel, I want to apologize for what your son has experienced at our school. I assure you, physical punishment of any kind is strictly prohibited at Westridge Academy. Samuel's face remained impassive, his calloused farmer's hands folded carefully in his lap. My son has never lied to me. If he says Ms. Winters struck him, then she did. Ms. Winters leaned forward indignantly. This is preposterous. The boy is clearly making up stories to distract from his academic dishonesty and disruptive behavior. Ms. Winters, Principal Edwards said firmly, multiple students have corroborated seeing Marcus's injuries. Furthermore, Dr. Carter has verified his mathematical abilities beyond any doubt. The door opened, and Emily entered, followed by Dr. Carter and, surprisingly, the school nurse. You asked to see us, Principal Edwards? Dr. Carter inquired. The principal nodded. Ms. Chen, you mentioned other students witnessed Mr. Johnson's injuries. Would you elaborate? Emily straightened, meeting Ms. Winters' glare without flinching. During PE 2 weeks ago, Marcus was changing his shirt when Tyler noticed bruises across his back. Several of us saw them. They were bad. She paused. Tyler took a picture and showed it around. I think he meant it as a joke at first, but... Is this true, Ms. Chen? Principal Edwards asked Marcus. Marcus nodded reluctantly. Tyler did take a picture. He deleted it later, but yes. Principal Edwards turned to the nurse. Ms. Rivera, did Marcus ever come to your office about these injuries? The nurse shook her head. No, but if I may. She approached Marcus. Would you mind if I examined your back now? As a medical professional, I can determine if the injuries are consistent with his account. With permission from Samuel, Marcus lifted his shirt. The nurse examined the fading bruises carefully, her expression growing increasingly grave. These bruises are approximately 2 weeks old, consistent with his timeline, she confirmed. And the pattern? She hesitated. The linear marks are consistent with being struck by a straight-edged object like a ruler. Multiple strikes, applied with significant force. Ms. Winters' face had grown pale. This is circumstantial at best. There's no proof I caused those injuries. Actually, Emily said quietly, there might be. She pulled out her phone. I didn't want to mention this before because I was scared, but... She pressed play on a video recording. The room fell silent as tinny audio filled the air, Ms. Winters' voice clearly audible, this will teach you to correct me in front of the class. Count them. 1. 2. The sounds of a ruler striking flesh followed by muffled gasps of pain made Samuel clench his fists. I recorded it from outside the classroom door, Emily explained, her voice shaking. I had stayed after school for chess club and heard what was happening. I was too afraid to intervene, but I thought someone should know. Ms. Winter's facade finally crumbled. That recording is inadmissible. It was taken without my knowledge or consent. This isn't a court of law, Ms. Winters, Principal Edwards replied coldly. This is about the safety and well-being of our students. Dr. Carter, who had remained silent, finally spoke. If I may, there's another matter that concerns me deeply. Yesterday, Marcus was deliberately excluded from my presentation, a presentation particularly relevant to his extraordinary mathematical talents. Ms. Winters sputtered, I made decisions based on classroom behavior. Based on prejudice, Samuel interrupted, his deep voice resonating with controlled anger. You saw a farmer's son, a black farmer's son, and decided he didn't belong in your elite world of mathematics. The accusation hung in the air, impossible to dismiss. Principal Edwards stood, his decision evident in his posture. Ms. Winters, you are suspended effective immediately, pending a full investigation and likely termination proceedings. Please surrender your school keys and ID to my secretary on your way out. You can't do this. Ms. Winters exclaimed. I've been teaching here for 15 years. You should have thought of that before striking a student, Principal Edwards replied evenly. Mr. Johnson, he turned to Samuel, on behalf of Westridge Academy, I offer our deepest apologies. We will ensure nothing like this ever happens again. As Ms. Winters was escorted out, Dr. Carter approached Marcus and Samuel. Mr. Johnson, both Mr. Johnsons, I would like to discuss Marcus's future. His mathematical gift is extraordinary. With the right mentorship, there's no limit to what he might achieve. For the first time in weeks, Marcus felt the weight lifting from his shoulders, not just the physical pain, but the burden of silence and shame. As he looked from his father's proud face to Dr. Carter's respectful one, he knew that something fundamental had changed. The truth had emerged, as his father always said it would, like a seedling breaking through hard soil into the light. The days following Ms. Winters' suspension passed in a whirlwind for Marcus. News of the confrontation spread through Westridge Academy like wildfire, transforming him overnight from the scholarship student to the mathematical prodigy. Students who had previously ignored or mocked him now regarded him with a mixture of awe and awkward respect. 1 week after the incident, Marcus and his father arrived at Westridge Academy for a special meeting of the school board. The grand conference room, with its polished oak table and portraits of distinguished alumni, felt worlds away from their modest farmhouse kitchen. Principal Edwards welcomed them warmly. Mr. Johnson, Marcus, thank you for coming. The board is eager to address recent events properly. As they took their seats, Marcus noticed Dr. Carter was also present, along with several serious-looking men and women in business attire. Emily and her parents sat nearby, offering encouraging smiles. Board Chairwoman Mrs. Eleanor Richards, an elegant woman with silver hair, called the meeting to order. We're convened today to address two matters: the misconduct of a faculty member and the recognition of extraordinary academic achievement. She turned first to Samuel and Marcus. On behalf of the entire board, I extend our deepest apologies for the inexcusable treatment Marcus endured. An external investigation has confirmed all allegations against Ms. Victoria Winters, who has been terminated effective immediately. Murmurs rippled through the room as Mrs. Richards continued, furthermore, we've implemented new training protocols for all staff and expanded our anonymous reporting system to ensure nothing like this ever happens again. Samuel nodded solemnly. I appreciate your actions. No child should ever face what Marcus experienced. Indeed, Mrs. Richards agreed. Now to the second matter. She smiled at Marcus. Dr. Carter has shared with us your remarkable solution to the harmonic convergence problem. Would you care to hear what has happened since? Marcus nodded, curious. Dr. Carter stood, his face alight with enthusiasm. Marcus, I submitted your solution to the International Mathematics Committee for review. They've verified your work is not only correct but groundbreaking. He paused, letting the significance sink in. Your approach creates a bridge between theoretical mathematics and practical applications that opens entirely new avenues for research. The board members nodded appreciatively as Dr. Carter continued, "I've been authorized to invite you to present your solution at next month's International Mathematics Conference in Chicago. All expenses will be covered by the Carter Foundation." Marcus's eyes widened. "Present at the conference? Me?" "Yes, you," Dr. Carter confirmed with a warm smile. "Your work deserves recognition on the world stage." Principal Edwards added, "Westridge Academy will provide whatever support you need to prepare, including excused absences and access to our advanced resources." For a moment, Marcus couldn't find words. Samuel placed a supportive hand on his shoulder. "My son would be honored," he said, pride evident in his voice. "There's more," Mrs. Richards interjected. "In light of these events, Westridge Academy is establishing the Johnson Scholarship for Mathematical Excellence, specifically for students from rural and underserved communities." The announcement left both Johnsons speechless. "Marcus," Mrs. Richards continued, "your brilliance reminded us that exceptional minds exist everywhere, not just in privileged environments. This scholarship will ensure others like you have the opportunity to develop their gifts without facing the obstacles you encountered." As the meeting concluded, Emily approached Marcus. "I knew you were brilliant the first day you answered Ms. Winter's question without hesitation. I'm just sorry about everything that happened after." "Don't be," Marcus replied. "You stood up for me when no one else would. That took courage." To everyone's surprise, Tyler Brooks approached next, looking uncharacteristically humble. "Johnson. Marcus. I owe you an apology. The things I said, the way I treated you, it wasn't right." Marcus studied the wealthy boy who had once mocked his clothes and background. "Thank you for confirming what happened with Ms. Winters. That couldn't have been easy." Tyler nodded awkwardly. "Yeah, well, what she did was wrong. And for what it's worth, solving that equation was pretty badass." As they prepared to leave, Dr. Carter pulled Marcus aside. "There's one more thing. Several universities have expressed interest in offering you early admission with full scholarships after learning about your work." Samuel, overhearing, looked momentarily concerned. Marcus is only 17. He still has his senior year to complete. "Of course," Dr. Carter nodded. "These would be for next fall. But it's not too early to begin considering options." He handed Samuel a folder. "These are some preliminary offers. Take your time reviewing them." As father and son drove home in their pickup truck, the sunset painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, Samuel glanced at Marcus. "Your mother would be so proud of you today." Marcus smiled, feeling a complex mixture of emotions, vindication, pride, and a growing sense of possibility he had never dared imagine before. "I kept hearing her voice, you know. Telling me not to give up, not to let anyone make me feel less than I am." Samuel nodded, his eyes glistening slightly. "That sounds exactly like her." He paused thoughtfully. "You know, son, sometimes life's hardest moments lead to our greatest opportunities. Like that irrigation problem that helped you solve the equation, pressure finding its path to something beautiful." Marcus looked out at the familiar farms passing by, seeing them with new eyes. He wasn't just a farmer's son anymore, nor was he just a scholarship student. He was Marcus Johnson, mathematician, and his future stretched before him like an equation waiting to be solved. Marcus stood backstage at the Chicago Convention Center, adjusting his tie for the 5th time. The International Mathematics Conference had drawn thousands of attendees, renowned professors, industry leaders, and brilliant minds from around the world. In minutes, he would present his solution to the harmonic convergence problem to this intimidating audience. "Nervous?" Dr. Carter asked, approaching with 2 cups of water. Marcus accepted one gratefully. "Terrified might be more accurate, sir." Dr. Carter chuckled. "I presented my first paper at 19 and nearly fainted. You're already ahead of me, presenting at 17. From the wings, Marcus could see his father sitting in the front row, looking somewhat out of place in his best suit but radiating pride nonetheless. Beside him sat Principal Edwards and, surprisingly, Emily and her parents who had traveled to support him. "Remember," Dr. Carter advised, "speak to your father. Explain it as if you're at your kitchen table. The mathematics will speak for itself." The conference moderator's voice boomed through the hall. "Next, we're privileged to welcome the youngest presenter in our conference's history. Please join me in welcoming Marcus Johnson, presenting Practical Applications of Fluid Dynamics to the Harmonic Convergence Problem." Applause filled the vast room as Marcus took a deep breath and walked onto the stage. The bright lights momentarily blinded him, but as his eyes adjusted, he found his father's encouraging smile and felt his anxiety begin to recede. "Good afternoon," he began, his voice steadier than expected. 3 weeks ago, I was standing at the back of a classroom with a sore back, excluded from a mathematical presentation because I didn't fit someone's idea of what a mathematician should look like. A murmur rippled through the audience. Today, I stand before you not because I've changed, but because circumstances allowed my work to be seen. Marcus clicked to his first slide. The harmonic convergence problem has resisted traditional solutions because we've been viewing it through a purely theoretical lens. Over the next 20 minutes, Marcus guided the audience through his solution, explaining how principles of irrigation systems and water flow had illuminated a mathematical pathway others had overlooked. As he warmed to his subject, his natural enthusiasm for mathematics emerged, his hands animated as he described the connections between practical physics and theoretical mathematics. When he concluded, the room fell silent for a moment before erupting in thunderous applause. Several mathematicians rose to their feet, followed by others until the entire hall gave him a standing ovation. During the Q&A session, Marcus fielded complex questions with a composure that belied his age. When asked about his future plans, he smiled. "I'm considering several university offers, but first I need to finish high school. And help my dad with the fall harvest." The simple statement, delivered without pretension, earned him appreciative laughter and even more respect. After the presentation, mathematicians crowded around him, offering business cards and invitations to visit their institutions. Journalists requested interviews, and publishing representatives discussed turning his solution into a formal paper. Through it all, Marcus maintained a humble demeanor, repeatedly crediting his father's practical wisdom and his late mother's encouragement of his mathematical interests. When he finally managed to break away, he found his father waiting, eyes shining with unshed tears. "Mom would have loved this," Marcus said quietly. Samuel nodded, unable to speak for a moment. Finally, he managed, "She always said your mind was a gift that would take you places I couldn't imagine." He gestured around the prestigious venue. "I think this qualifies." Emily approached next, beaming. "That was amazing. The way you explained complex math so clearly, I actually understood most of it." "Thanks for coming," Marcus said sincerely. "Your support made a difference from day one." As they headed toward the exit, Marcus was surprised to find Tyler Brooks waiting somewhat awkwardly by the door, his father, a stern-looking corporate executive, beside him. "Johnson," Tyler nodded. "That was impressive. What are you doing here?" Marcus asked, surprised. Tyler's father extended his hand to Samuel. "Robert Brooks. I serve on Westridge Academy's board. When I heard about what happened, and about your son's achievement, I wanted to witness it firsthand." He turned to Marcus. "Young man, you have a remarkable gift. And Tyler has learned some valuable lessons from your experience." Tyler shifted uncomfortably but added, "My dad says there's a place for you at his company someday, if you want it." Marcus smiled. "I appreciate that. I'm keeping my options open." As they walked out into the Chicago evening, camera flashes greeted them. News of the teenage mathematical prodigy had spread beyond academic circles. A reporter thrust a microphone toward Marcus. "How does it feel to go from a farmer's son to a mathematical celebrity overnight?" Marcus thought for a moment before answering, "I'm still a farmer's son. That hasn't changed. What changed is that someone finally looked past that to see what else I could be." Samuel squeezed his son's shoulder proudly as they navigated through the crowd, stepping together into a future neither could have imagined just 1 month before. 3 months after the mathematics conference, Westridge Academy had transformed in subtle but significant ways. The Johnson Scholarship Program had been fully implemented, bringing 5 promising students from rural communities into the school. Anti-discrimination training had become mandatory for all staff, and Principal Edwards had established an anonymous reporting system for students experiencing mistreatment. Marcus, now in his final semester, divided his time between advanced studies, tutoring younger students, and considering university offers that arrived almost weekly. His back had finally healed completely, though the experience had left him with a stronger sense of justice and purpose. On a crisp spring morning, he stood before a classroom of freshman mathematics students, explaining complex concepts with the same clarity and enthusiasm he demonstrated at the conference. Mathematics isn't just about memorizing formulas, he told them. It's about seeing connections between seemingly unrelated things. A farmer's irrigation system and a complex equation might seem worlds apart, but they follow the same fundamental principles. Emily, who had become his assistant in these tutoring sessions, smiled from the back of the room. Their friendship had deepened over the months, strengthened by shared experiences and mutual respect. After class, Principal Edwards approached him. "Marcus," Dr. Carter called. "The implementation of your solution has led to breakthroughs in 3 different fields. He's nominated you for the Young Scientist Award." Marcus accepted the news with characteristic humility. "That's very kind of him, but the real victory is seeing other scholarship students thriving here." He gestured toward 2 younger students nearby, children from backgrounds similar to his own who now walked Westridge's hallways with confidence. Later that afternoon, as Marcus headed to his father's truck, Tyler fell into step beside him. "Johnson," he said, "I wanted you to know I've been accepted to MIT. I'll be studying computer science." "Congratulations," Marcus replied sincerely. "You'll do well there." Tyler hesitated. "My dad wanted me to remind you his offer still stands for summer internships. He says mathematical minds like yours are rare in business." Marcus smiled. "Tell him I appreciate it. I might take him up on that someday." As they parted ways, Marcus reflected on how much had changed. The boy who had once mocked him now sought his approval. The school that had once marginalized him now celebrated his achievements. Yet through it all, his core identity remained unchanged. He was still Samuel Johnson's son, still the boy who had learned mathematics at his mother's knee and practical wisdom in his father's fields. That evening, as Marcus helped his father repair farm equipment, Samuel asked, "Have you decided? Stanford's offering a full ride, but so are MIT and Princeton." Marcus tightened a bolt before answering. "I'm leaning toward Howard University, actually. Their mathematics department is excellent, and Dr. Carter has connections there." Samuel nodded approvingly. "Your mother would like that choice." In the comfortable silence that followed, Marcus thought about his journey, from the pain of Ms. Winter's cruelty to the triumph of the conference, from exclusion to celebration. "Dad," he said finally, "remember when you told me growth happens in darkness, under pressure?" "I remember. You were right." Marcus wiped his hands on a rag. "But you forgot to mention that after the pressure, after breaking through the soil, comes the light." Samuel smiled, recognition of his own metaphor spreading across his weathered face. "That's the best part of farming, watching what grows after the hard work is done." In a small apartment across town, Victoria Winters sat alone, watching a news segment on television. Marcus Johnson's face filled the screen as a reporter discussed his recent nomination for the Young Scientist Award and his selection of Howard University over Ivy League offers. The narrator's voice explained, Johnson's mathematical breakthrough, developed using principles he learned on his family farm, has been called the most innovative approach to the problem in decades by leading experts. Ms. Winters switched off the television, her expression unreadable. Her dismissal from Westridge had been followed by rejection from every school in the region. Her reputation, once sterling, now lay in ruins, all because she had failed to see beyond her own prejudices. Meanwhile, the student she had deemed unworthy was changing the world of mathematics, his future limitless. Perhaps, she reflected with belated insight, the most valuable lesson had been hers to learn all along. Back at the Johnson farm, father and son stood together under a canopy of stars, their work finished for the day. Marcus looked up at the infinite mathematical patterns of the night sky and smiled, knowing that his journey was just beginning. "Ready for whatever comes next?" Samuel asked. Marcus nodded confidently. "More than ready." Dear friend, this story reminds us that prejudice and discrimination can silence extraordinary voices and deprive the world of remarkable contributions. Every child deserves to be seen for their potential, not judged by their appearance, background, or circumstances. True education means recognizing that brilliance comes in all forms, from all communities, and nurturing that potential wherever it's found. When we break down barriers and challenge our biases, we allow exceptional minds like Marcus's to flourish. If this story touched your heart, please like this video to help spread this important message. And subscribe to join our community dedicated to sharing these powerful stories of resilience, justice, and triumph that remind us of our shared humanity and the difference one voice can make.